Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
On this week's program, efforts to draw Minnesota's new legislative districts are beginning as key lawmakers define principles to help guide their decisions. Plus, a former House Majority Leader talks about her new role in the Senate minority. Stay tuned for this and more on this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Loehrke. Next year, voters across the nation will be casting their ballots in newly created legislative and congressional districts that reflect changes in the population. The process of drawing new districts is complex, and I recently spoke with Senator Mark Johnson, chair of the Senate's Redistricting Committee, about the committee's initial steps in reorganizing Minnesota to fairly divide the population for the coming decade. The census data is very late this year, impacting the ability of the Senate Redistricting Committee, of which you are chair, to even begin working on the process. When are you expecting to get the necessary population information that you need?
Well, thank you, Shannon. And first of all, I'd like to start off with saying thank you for having me on the program. It's been a while since I've seen you, so appreciate that. And I think the last couple of times I was with you, we were in studio. So this again is kind of old hat, the Zoom, but it still works. So the data that came through on a normal censusing year comes through early spring typically. This year, of course, we've got the apportionment that was about 3 months late. Now that just determines how many congressmen and women we're going to have in the state. And so we were very, very fortunate. We thought we were going to lose one, drop from 8 down to 7. But we held on by 89 people in the state. So we beat out New York for that 8th seat, which is just wonderful. Does 2 things. Number one, we have more representation in the federal government, which means that, everything from federal funds to just pure policy considerations, we've got better representation. And then it also makes my job as redistricting much easier, because if you had to rewrite the whole board, all of a sudden there gets to be major battles. But now when we just need to tweak the edges and try to make sure that those districts are very, very even, that becomes a whole lot better of a process because we've got the framework right there. On the state level, we don't have that apportionment. We've got to wait until August, mid-August at earliest, for those numbers to come in, probably looking into September before they're actually usable numbers. So that means what we would have been doing normally, committee hearings, the map drawing, all that fun stuff this spring, that gets pushed way out into probably next fall before we're able to really get a hold of that and start putting those maps out. But that, like we know that we don't have session at that point. So that'll have to be, maps that we're doing together, taking testimony across the state from communities, groups of interest, all those different people. And that'll push that, into the summer and maybe into the fall as well. And so we've got a lot of that going on.
What is the deadline to have some kind of maps done?
Yeah. So in Minnesota statute, we have to have the maps done by February 14th. At that point, if we don't have an agreement and the governor hasn't signed off on those maps, all of a sudden that gets kicked over to the courts. Now, for 50 years, the courts have been involved in the process very heavily, doing parallel proceedings, knowing that the likelihood of it being kicked over to the courts is relatively high. Our goal in the Senate, and I believe in the House as well, is to get an agreement on a map and not have the court involved. But we do have that fallback on February 14th. If it doesn't happen, the Minnesota statute really takes over at that point and says, courts, you take this for a spin.
Now, the committee has met a couple times, and one of the things that you're talking about are principles of redistricting. What kinds of principles are under consideration?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when the court is looking at, or we're looking at maps, what's important? It really puts out the values of how do we do a map that's fair and very transparent. And so we're looking at things like compactness, which means, making sure that we've all seen those districts that it might look like your hand. You've got these starbursts going out, different things that that really gives the name gerrymandering to things. So we want to make sure that our districts are as compact as they can reasonably be. Things like communities of interest, whether it's farmer groups or a certain nationality or whatever it might be, that they're represented in a way that makes sense. And so we're trying to list out all those different principles. Then there's statutory principles, like where we start in the state in redistricting as far as the numberings. Luckily, I'm in the #1 district in the whole state. So we start up there in the northwest corner and work our way down. Some of those things are just statutory principles that we need to follow as well. So those are kind of what the principles do, our values in assessing those maps.
Now, technically, the legislature does have a lot of leeway in how to draw districts that the courts do not. So in a perfect world, how might the legislature redraw the districts? Is 67 Senate districts the right number? Should it be more? Should it be less? Are any conversations like that happening? Sure.
Senator Jensen in prior years had some proposals to reduce the size of the legislature. That's statutorily defined. What we need to have 67 senators and 2 representatives for each Senate district. So that's not really a discussion right now. That's not something that we're going to be having. That's a policy debate that we can have later on. Right now, we just want to make sure that our maps fit the statutory requirements that are and the whole process is very open and transparent. And that's really our focus right now, is getting that map done.
Now, over the last 10 years, populations have moved between rural and urban areas. So you mentioned, communities being kept together, but I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about urban versus rural and a little bit more about tribal nations. There's been consideration, people have mentioned the importance of perhaps keeping tribal nations intact. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we'll go to the rural metro divide. I think that's a really interesting one, because as the metro becomes more dense, more population growing in the metro areas, what that means for rural areas like my own is all of a sudden our population, even if it stays the same, our districts need to grow in order to hit that population number. Right now, it's about 79,000 per Senate district. We're thinking it'll probably be about 85, I think, is a number that we're going to be roughly around. So even though my district has stayed relatively the same, it'll have to grow bigger just to match the other districts now. So as rural starts gaining larger districts, they lose representation as it moves down into the metro area, which, it's the function of law. It's the way it works, and it makes sense. I do get a little concerned about, we occupy a large amount of territory outside the metro area. All of a sudden, the policies and the things that we're interested in our hometowns and our home districts, that voice really starts to become diminished. So I'm concerned about that, but it's just a function of population. Then moving on to your tribal consideration there too. That's one that's been brought up several times through my committee hearings here. We've had 3 of them now. That's one that's been brought up, I think, in each of those committee hearings. Yeah, and that's something we're going to really have to investigate, because on the one hand, I can understand where you'd want to have whether it's a reservation or whatever community of interest, you'd really want to have your own senator or whatever to make sure that your area is locked up. But the other hand is, if you had your district or your reservation broken up into more senators or representatives had a connection to it, your voice is a little bit louder down the legislature. So there's that balance. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the debate on that this summer as we get into those areas and hear from these people a little bit more, because that's one that I've heard both sides from different cities. Like, we want more senators, we want less senators, So I'm really curious on how the different reservations feel about that.
And one last question before we go. You mentioned that the courts have had to get involved over the last quite a few decades in terms of drawing the district. So I wonder about your thoughts on, should the legislature pass a redistricting process to be put in the hands of a nonpartisan commission?
Sure. Well, that's kind of hard asking the redistricting chair if we should move it outside. I'm a little biased on that one. Minnesota has done this process now. I mean, it's been moving back and forth between the courts and the legislature for the last 50 years. Some people might say that that's a broken system, and they might say that, you know, look, that's evidence of that. I look at it a little different. When you look at the election results over just the last 10 years, look at how evenly it's been divided, going back and forth. We have divided government. We have checks and balances. You know, I'm interested in making sure that our maps are free and fair of any sort of doubt. But we've really had some terrific outcomes from our elections that I don't think people can say that that's not fair. I don't think the outcomes have been all that bad for Minnesotans. So, you know, it's a unique process. It's something that you can see some failures maybe within it, but I think the outcomes have been very good for Minnesotans.
Senator Mark Johnson, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Appreciate it.
The Energy Conservation and Optimization Act of 2021 would allow new, more efficient technologies to count toward electricity providers' energy savings plans. The proposal recently came before the Senate.
Propane has been brought up. They have been probably the largest proponent of this, and I have worked with them and explained to them repeatedly the provisions that are in the bill that should give them comfort to know that this does not, and it is not going to decimate their industry. I'm a propane customer myself. If I believed that, I would not be the chief author of this bill.
Propane is cleaner burning. And this isn't just me saying this. The Clean Air Act of 1990, the National Energy Policy Act of 1992, etc., all state that propane is recognized as a green energy.
What we're looking at doing is you're going to take those folks that are struggling to pay their electric bill now, and you're going to supplement the rich guy to buy his electric vehicle. And I don't think that's right.
It contains some very powerful ideas in it. You know, taking the power and all of the leverage of the SIP program and making more and better use of it on behalf of our overall electrical energy system, potentially our transportation sector, saving ratepayers money and creating a much more efficient overall system, and perhaps even doing some good for our public health and our climate challenges.
80% of the world's graphite resources are located in our good friend and model world citizen, China. 80% of the graphite needed to construct renewables. 50% of the world's cobalt reserves are located in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, a nation unstable and a nation that uses child labor.
No, it's not perfect. It has things, interestingly, on both sides of the aisle that we don't like. But the question is, are we going to send it to conference where its potential is really, really great? Remember, who are the groups that support the original eco bill? Utilities. These are the people that provide us electricity. Labor, that's working men and women, and there's local jobs at stake in this bill. And then the ratepayers, that's all of us. The people that pay the cost of electricity, and the efficiency provided for in the eco bill is going to make that better.
This is landmark energy legislation. You know, I was here in 2007. We did the renewable energy standard. People comment that as landmark. This is landmark too. This is a big step in the transition from where we have been to where we're going to be.
When we're not even able to say our state goals are close to where the utilities already are able to go, in saving money for their ratepayers, saving money, improving the environment, cleaning it up. You can't have more of a win-win, and yet we're so timid in this. So while I applaud Senator Loehrke's work on it, I also got to say that I think we got to recognize we're in a climate crisis.
If we can pass this today, this is one more big step for this bill. It's not the finish line, though. I'm committed to working with Representative Stevenson and Conference Committee to bring this back in a way that we deal with compromise, and hopefully that every member in this chamber can support.
Over the years, the Minnesota Senate has gained experienced legislators who had previously served in the House of Representatives. Senator Erin Murphy had not only prior legislative experience, but also leadership experience. I had the opportunity to talk with her about her new Senate perspective. The breadth of your legislative experience is wide and deep. It isn't unusual for a member of the House to move to the Senate, but it is unusual for a member of the majority and a majority leader, no less, to move to the Senate and then be in a minority role. How have those experiences shaped your views on the legislative process?
It is so good to be with you today. And I have been thinking a lot here at the end of this session about that very question. And from my perspective, every office that we hold, whether in the majority or in the minority, has power. And we should use that power for its intended purpose for the people of Minnesota. So whether I am in a quote unquote leadership position or in the House or the Senate, I represent Minnesotans who have sent me here to do their work. And I'm going to use the power, every ounce of the power in the office that I hold on their behalf to fight for them. Leadership comes in many forms. There's a title that comes with majority leader. There's a title with the office of senator. And I'm going to use the power that I have, which is rooted in the people on their behalf. And so I continue to do their work.
So perhaps it isn't a fair question, but which body is better, the House or the Senate? Or at the very least, how are they different?
They are different, absolutely different. And more than the number of people, more than the color of the carpet. And COVID, I think, has really interrupted the ways in which I like to get to know people. So I want to come back to that in another year. But one thing I've been thinking a lot about are the rules of the Senate. And we have a rule in the House and in the Senate that we speak through either the Speaker or the President. But there is a rule in the Senate about keeping our eyes and our comments directed right to the President. And I have found that the inability to look at one another, to turn and look, to make eye contact with my fellow colleagues in the Minnesota Senate is a contributor from my perspective to the partisan differences that we're experiencing. And if we really want to represent well the interests of Minnesotans and to break down the barriers that are in our way, I think we'd be better off if we could make eye contact with one another from time to time while we're speaking on the floor. The human part of us, our ability to connect with one another, especially when we're talking about issues that are challenging, that are painful, that are separating us, I think we'd be better off if we were able to engage in human ways just a little bit more. So that's one thing I've been thinking a lot about in the Senate, and that rule that requires me to only look at the President while I'm speaking.
What are some of the important attributes of leadership in your view? And has it been a challenge for you to temper those abilities that you have as a member of the minority freshman class in the Senate?
So leadership really rests in who we are, right? Are we true to ourselves? Are we genuinely reflecting the interests of Minnesotans as they're sharing themselves with us? Are we willing to take a risk to stand up on their behalf? Are we willing to use the office and the risks to ourselves of making people angry or potentially losing a seat? Are we willing to take that kind of risk for Minnesotans? You know, you mentioned before that I was the majority leader, and I was, and I'm so proud of the work that we did together in 2013 and 2014, and we lost our majority in part because of the things that we did for Minnesota. We lost seats in greater Minnesota in part because of marriage equality. We engaged in a very, very vigorous agenda to balance the budget, and we did, and we raised taxes to do it. There were some things that we did that I think maybe cost our majority, and I lost that title, if you will, and that position as a result. I wouldn't change a thing. We should use every ounce of the power that we have, of the leadership we have for Minnesotans. And I think that is the measure of leadership that I am always looking for.
Minnesotans appear to value divided government. And as someone who has served in both the majority and the minority, is divided government working effectively for Minnesotans?
I think Minnesotans do value divided government, but we have made more progress in my tenure when we have had a unified government. I am always frustrated at this time of the year when we get hung up on the partisan political debates that aren't advancing our goals. For instance, today we're going to take up an amendment that is meant to limit the power of the executive branch over the use of those federal funds that are coming in. And as a legislature, it's our job to appropriate funds and set the budget. We should just do that rather than fighting over who has which power. That is an argument that I think gets lost on Minnesotans, but we spend an inordinate amount of time, and we have in this last year, talking about whose power should be checked. I believe in balanced government. I believe in a checked government where our power is checked. But I don't want to spend all my time talking about how to effectively check another branch of government. I want to spend my time working for Minnesotans. And today is an example where we're not doing that. So I do worry about the premise of divided government. I worry a lot about false bipartisanship and it getting in the way of actually making progress for the people of Minnesota.
You are the DFL lead of the Senate Agriculture and Rural Development Committee. During your years in the other body, you served on the Health and Human Services Committee, I assume because of your career in nursing. So what prompted you to tackle agriculture, and what have you learned thus far?
Over my tenure in the legislature, I've served on many committees: early childhood, health and human services, taxes, rules, legacy, and now ag. And I'm so proud to be the DFL lead on that committee. I care deeply about people and want to use the power of this office and the tools of our democratic institutions to improve their lives, including people who live in rural places. And especially having run statewide and served as a majority leader, which is a statewide office. I am very now familiar with the challenges that people face all across the state and have made commitments to them. And I know one of the places where I can advance those commitments and build the lives of the people of greater Minnesota by funding broadband, but making sure that people who are living in rural places have every opportunity, just like everybody else in every other part of the state. Part of my work is about solving those problems, and I'm really happy to do it from this perch.
Are there a few things, though, that surprised you, having not maybe dug in so deeply into agriculture before?
You know, every policy area that I have dug into has shown me over and over again the complexity of people's lives and the richness of people's lives. We are a beautiful mosaic across the state, and every part of the state, every region of the state is different, but that's what makes us Minnesota. And so this committee has once again shown me the complexity of life, the need for us to pay attention and listen to one another, and the value of having a legislature that represents every part of the state with powerful voices. Because those voices together, when we are actually listening to one another and doing our work, means that we're going to find solutions that work best for the people of Minnesota.
And finally, you are also a member of the Senate Redistricting Committee, which is off to a slow start this year, due at least in part to the census delays. How would you like to see redistricting proceed, and will the legislature, for the first time in decades, get this work done?
I sure hope that we get the work done for the people of Minnesota. My primary goal is to make sure that Minnesotans understand what's happening around redistricting and that they can bring their voices to bear on the process in the legislature. And if it goes to the courts, on the process set forth by the courts, because it's their power that's at stake in this process. So I want to make sure that Minnesotans are engaged, and I'm going to work to engage them so that in the end, the process, however it results, is representative of them, of our communities across the state, and so that we develop a fair map in a transparent way that allows Minnesotans to continue to use the power of their vote to build our future.
Senator Erin Murphy, it is always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for having me. I look forward to our next conversation.
adoption of California's vehicle emission standards remains controversial, despite a recent administrative law judge ruling that the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency can move forward. The issue was the focus of a recent meeting.
You know, the ALJ wasn't saying, oh yes, California emissions are the way to go. That's not at all what it was. And I stand still very strong in saying that the Minnesotans, at least the ones that I represent and the members of our caucus represent, think that they should have this opened up for more discussion because it is such a big issue.
It says the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency established, it has the statutory authority to adopt the proposed rules. It complied with all procedural requirements of law and rule, and that the proposed rules are needed and reasonable. That's what the administrative law. And then they went on to say, therefore, the ALJ approves the proposed rules and recommends they be adopted.
This rulemaking is within the purview of MPCA, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. If they don't have authority over vehicle emissions, which cause pollution, I'm not sure what their role is.
I've made it very clear that we're not going to move forward unless our stand on this is accepted.
The effect of the Senate's moratorium would prevent the Clean Cars rules from going into effect until 2027. It's 2021 right now. And this is a full 3 years after the current effective date of 2024.
When you talk rulemaking to the average person, they have no idea what you're talking about.
Essentially, we don't even have to go into rulemaking, and we are governed by the Federal Clean Air Act, number one. Number two, as electric vehicles are manufactured and sent to the market, people will be able to get any kind of vehicle that is manufactured. All they have to do is go to their dealership and tell them which one they want. They can order them. Now, there's some concern that maybe Minnesota won't be able to get vehicles. And yet I drove through a car dealership in Hibbing, Minnesota the other day, and there were 60 electric vehicles on the lot.
The tailpipe emissions have an impact on us whether we realize it or not. It's interesting to me that when we stop and take a deep breath, the discussions about the legislature hasn't been involved, because we've had Zoom hearing after Zoom hearing, and the House has heard this and debated it in committees over and over and on the floor in 2 legislative cycles. But we draw a different conclusion than the Senate.
I do not accept the fact that I'm holding up anything at all. We have to compromise.
Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Loehrke, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.